Welcome back to 3 Zen. Nice afternoon here in central North Carolina. It's about to rain out, so it's a good time to come upstairs and tell you a story. This story is going to take two parts, part one and part two, because it's got quite a few details in it, and I just think it would lend itself to being split into two parts. And it involves the loss of a T-38, tail number 8103. So what you'll see is 8103 part 1, 8103 part 2. Okay, so what happened is this aircraft crashed in 1977. I had just gotten back from safety school, and Jerry Hodson, who was probably a mentor of mine, was down at headquarters ATC, and he thought this would be a good accident for me to cut my teeth on as an investigator. So I got assigned to the accident board as the safety accident investigator. Okay. So I get down to Randolph, and it turns out the instructor pilot was a friend of mine from Vance. I call him Father Pat. His name was Pat, and I'll tell you how he got the moniker here in part two. The guy in the back seat's name was Roger. And so we started, both of them survived, and we started putting things together. And what we first learned was that the accident began when Pat gave Roger the aircraft in a nose-low attitude, left bank, and it wasn't too exaggerated. It was kind of like this, for a nose-low recovery. So he said, as we typically would do, okay, Roger, the aircraft's yours. And the idea is Roger would take the aircraft, apply right aileron, roll wings level, and bring it up to level flight. Fairly straightforward. Okay. What happened is, as they're heading downhill, Roger takes the airplane and starts to roll it to the right, but he's encountering quite a bit of resistance. And that was not normal. And Roger was coming from another weapon system at the time, and so he was a little bit confused. And as I think it would confuse anyone. So anyway, he starts to roll to the right, and he's feeling this resistance, so he centers the stick. When he does that, the airplane then does one of these, goes into a left roll. Holy crap! Pat takes the airplane, and Pat was a big man, mind you. He was a big guy, strong guy. So he takes the airplane, and he manages to get it more or less kind of wings level and stabilized and leveled off, but the best he could get out of that airplane was a 15-degree bank with full right aileron and a little bit of right rudder. And the best he could manage was 15 degrees of bank. Well, this dog's not going to hunt, so they're flying around trying to figure out what in the world happened. Declared an emergency and started working through figuring out what happened, try to get some idea what happened. There was another aircraft out in the area flown by Sandy Avery, and Sandy was a good guy. I liked Sandy. He was an old-time guy, a lot of experience. So Sandy comes over to their area to rejoin on them and just kind of follow them to watch what's going on. So Pat's going around, like I said, the best they can get is 15 degrees of bank, and it's one of these things, well, I wonder if anything would change if we put the gear down. So they slowed up below 240, put the gear down. When they put the gear down, the damn airplane wanted to flip on them even more. And I'm thinking, when we put the gear down in the T-38, first thing that happens is the gear doors come down, the main gear doors. Well, when those came down, that was another airfoil that came out there even before the gear got out. So that probably, more than likely, started the rolling moment. Okay, so they put that back up. Don't suggest I do that again. So anyway, got it recovered, and it was obvious at that time they were not going to be able to land it. So Pat says to Roger, he says, listen, he says, there's no way we can land this thing with full right aileron and still in a 15-degree bank, and I'm using rudder as much as I dare. He says, check over your harnesses. I think we're going to have to step over the side. So Roger looks down, and he'd forgotten to attach his chest strap on his parachute. Holy crap. So he hooks it up and checks his leg straps are tight. And They fly around and talk about it a little bit longer, but not much, I suppose. And then they subsequently bail out. Roger, being in the back seat, he went out first. Pat's holding the airplane as steady as he can, and then he initiates his ejection, and out he comes. The ejection was successful for both Pat and Roger. Roger came out without any injury, and Pat had two injuries of note. The first one, when he let go of the stick to bail out, he was holding it all the way to the right. Well, the stick came over and smashed his knees. Thanks a lot. And his knee took a beating on that one. And then when he came out into the slipstream, his helmet chin strap was a little loose. So what happens? The helmet rotated back on him, and the chin strap popped him in the throat and broke his larynx. And so he had to deal with that then for the rest of his life, essentially. Okay, so they both get on the ground, they debrief us and tell us what happened. We go out to the airplane and went, holy crap, that's a busted up T-38. So now we start to try to figure out what would cause that airplane to end up in a situation where you've got a left turn, full right aileron, you can't get the thing level. So that took us, one thing and another led us to the aileron servo valves. Now, those servo valves are kind of neat. They are cylindrical in nature, and they have several ports in there. And there's a spool in there and several orifices around the side of it. And the spool is controlled mechanically, so it goes in and out of this. Keep your mind on track, okay? Goes in and out, and based on how it's biased, will port fluid either aileron up or aileron down. All right, so they pulled these two, the left and right servo valves. On the right one, they found wear marks on the spool, and it looked like a pencil eraser. It was hard to discern, but you could tell it. So they saw these pencil marks, and so we got to looking at it, and I got a chance to work with these Kelly engineers, and they were just fantastic, just great guys. And they explained to me that in the T-38, if a servo valve fails, the aileron will fail below or further, either up or down, than what the other one has control over. About 5 degrees or 3 degrees, 5 degrees. The bottom line is you can't level the aircraft if it fails mechanically like that. So they took measurements of this mark on the spool, and what we did, we took those measurements and we took that servo valve and they spot welded it where they figure it had failed at, about where it had failed at. Spot welded it, and then we went over to the trainer in one of the hangars and had maintenance install it in the trainer they use to teach the airmen about flight controls. So they get this thing all hooked up and hydraulics all put to it, and now came time to turn on the hydraulic trainer to see what would happen to the aileron. Okay, fine. So they get it all hooked up, and I said, are you guys sure when we turn that thing on that that's not going to blow up and send shrapnel throughout the room? And they all looked at each other like, well, no, we're not. Well, I, for one, will just kind of stand out here in the hallway and listen up. You need somebody to report the damage if it occurs. And they all got to thinking about it. They said, you know, you got a good point there. So there's this airman walking by, and they say, hey, airman, are you qualified on this machine? And he said, yes, sir, I am. Certified? Yep. He said, you mind turning it on? We want to have a look at some of the features of it. He said, not at all. So he goes in and he turns it on. Not a problem. Anyway, when he turned it on, it was fascinating because that aileron, just as slow and nice as you want, went down below the normal operating area. But it didn't go down fast. It just smoothly went down. And that would explain why, when they were in this attitude and started rolling. That's the very moment that damn thing failed, is at that point there, and allowed that aileron to go down, which then gave him the uncommanded roll. Those kind of things just fascinated the crap out of me when I saw them. So we were able to put together a fairly nice accident reports. There wasn't too much you could do. There wasn't too much as far as detecting it again. Now, the mean time between failures of these things was very, very high. And to my knowledge, they haven't had one fail. They hadn't had one failed either before or since. Pretty reliable system overall. But at any rate, that's what happened to aircraft 8103. And I need to tell you here at this point, 8103, as I was doing the accident report, that tail number kept coming back and haunting me. Why is it 8103? What is that? And it badgered me for a while, but I didn't have a lot of time to dwell on it until I got home. And then I discovered that was the airplane we had our class picture taken, class 7107, taken alongside that airplane. Man, that hurts to see that thing in a pile of rubble like that. And then I checked my logbooks here before I started this presentation here, and sure enough, I'd flown it when I was a student. So that kind of gives you a quick synopsis of what happened to that aircraft. With that, this is Bobo, Base Gear. Stop.